All right. So I wanted to sort of think about and um, I guess I'm just gonna try to think out loud as I sort of respond to what was written here in this comment. I thought it was interesting, so I thought it was worth maybe discussing and give some insight on how my thought process works, and or maybe it doesn't work so well. I don't know. I'll let you guys be the judge of that. So let's see. I'll read this comment here. To what extent do you still require empirical evidence to accept theories like Young's? I came from your video where you explained you initially rejected religion because there wasn't empirical evidence validating it. You seem intellectually honest, so I'd very much like to know what now guides you to accept or reject different frameworks or theories. Is it perhaps based on if theories prove useful to your personality? I appreciate your video, but I've only watched you. Okay, so that part. Um, yeah. So I guess to summarize that, the question is, what is my requirement to accept a theory? Yeah, I've always been a thoughtful person, and I've always been a person who's full of questions. And my the way I look at the world, it's never I've never like come to a decision that okay, I know exactly how everything works, or like, okay, I have a sufficient understanding that is practical, and, now I'm going to stop thinking about this subject, and it's for all intents and purposes, this is what I believe, and now I'm going to do it this way, and I'm going to live my life in this, according to this creed that I have created or I have, decided upon, and now I'm going to move forward in this direction using this method based on these principles. And I've never been quite, I've always been sort of agnostic in my thinking that, whenever I constantly continue to revisit my ideas, and I constantly sort of look at it from different angles. I try to figure out, okay, is it, in what scenario, like there's all these different scenarios, and something can be true perhaps in one situation, and then it could be true in another situation, but then it could also be false and misleading in other situations. So, and then I like to broaden my insights, and ultimately, I'm constantly developing sort of a greater understanding. So my work as an observer, as a sort of a traveler through this experience, is never really quite complete. The one of my main passions in life is sort of philosophy and understanding the universe, and sort of looking at the details of things and then seeing how they're interconnected, with each other. And so what I've discovered throughout my journey through life is, there's recently, I think, a major development, through my last, in the last 10 years, perhaps, and maybe even last 20 years. I realized that my emotional life is, you know, there's my emotional self, and then there's like the intellectual self. And I think in the world that we live in currently, the intellectual self has sort of taken the main seat, because society is based on this intellectual, our current society is based on this intellectual, moving everything forward through the lens of analysis and, achievement based on a theoretical principles. So what do I mean by that? Okay, so you go to school and you learn all these subjects, and you don't necessarily want to learn any of this, but you're told that it is important for your success later on in life, that you will, reach a certain level of academic achievement, and then, you will get a good job or something, or you will get good enough grades to get into a good enough college, and then you'll get a good enough job, and then you can start a family, and then, at some point fulfillment happens, maybe. So this is what I would say is theoretical success, because you're not thinking about right now. You're not thinking about what does your heart want right now. What do you want? What feels good in your life right now? You're doing this delayed gratification strategy, which has, I think, reached unhealthy levels for human beings, because, along the way, we sit in school for, I don't know, 8 hours a day or something like that as children, extremely unhealthy. And we're just like constantly like told what to do, and, what to think. And, like if we have feelings, if we start misbehaving, if our body wants to like naturally begin moving, then, we get harshly punished and, threatened essentially by all the authority figures in our lives. So it bullies us into this intellectual thing where we're not allowed to have feelings. We're not really doing anything. And, those of us who already have problems, not problems, but are less socially inclined and have less social instincts, or more shy, that there's a real danger here of, now these individuals will seek refuge in, in all these vices that have been, created, because now they're trying to get they're told they can't be themselves in society. And now they go home and, they don't interact in school. And in school, they're just told, you have to do these, you have to do this intellectual work and assignments, and all the emphasis is on, academic achievement, and none of it has anything to do with, what we need as human beings. So, people who are not as socially inclined and don't have this natural instinct to fit in, with people, which, I am sort of more of a shy, reserved person by nature, or at least I started out that way. So, I kind of fell through the cracks, and, I wasn't particularly interested in school, and I didn't have much guidance. So what did I do? I, and no one told me it's okay to have feelings and to have these other instincts. So I think I created this very intellectual, person. And because no one said it's okay to be a feeling human being, I sort of completely neglected that part of myself. And, so I viewed everything through the lens of the mind, because that was, yeah, I think that is sort of the thing that is encouraged by our society. And It's sort of, I think the way it is structured, it shuts off has the danger of shutting off our social instincts and our emotional way of relating to the world. For people who are a little bit more introverted by nature. So, yeah. So I heavily leaned on the intellect, and I became, more of a loner. I always, had like a one friend, perhaps, and I had always had that, but you know, yeah, that it created a very difficult uh, situation of you're not really shown how to express yourself because the school system is not really designed for that, and it doesn't really care about you. It cares about, like, okay, yeah. So back to this idea of theoretical success. It cares about this image that you're told, like, okay, if you do all these things, then eventually maybe you'll be happy, which is, I think, very wrong, because along the way a lot of things will happen, and you're constantly sort of paying this price of coming further and further away from, and further disconnected from your emotional self, and you're basically taught to think in terms of the intellect only, and then society sort of punishes you for being this, because we don't encourage the emotional self in the school environment. Those of us who, you know if we have a good family that gives us some balance, and then we have these more feeling interactions with the people in our family, then you become perhaps a more stable human being. But if you don't have that, and you just have sort of an abusive parent, or you're neglected by your family, or your family is very closed off, then all you have is what school tells you that you need to do, but nobody really loves you at school, but you still do it because you say, okay, well, I've been taught into my intellect that maybe one day I can, if I'm successful, like this success might be something that will lead to happiness, because someday I'll get a good job and make some money, and then I can, have a family. But that is all, like, that's kind of a gamble, really, because you don't really know what's going to happen, and you're giving up a lot in the process. So I know I'm kind of rambling around here, trying to express a very big idea, and sometimes that can be a little bit challenging for me, to do it verbally out loud. Sometimes it's easier when I write it down on paper, and then I can sort of delete all this stuff that isn't concise. But essentially what I'm saying is, yeah, I ended up forgetting about my feeling self because of all this, because there wasn't really a stable home environment for me, and I wasn't encouraged to be myself in any area of my life. And I think there's many people like me who weren't encouraged in that way. And so what we did, we leaned heavily on the intellect to, like, think about things analytically, and then like we sort of like measure things by, okay, is it true or false, is this, did Jesus walk on water? Okay, well, I don't know. Can somebody walk on water? Have I ever seen somebody walk on water? No. So, therefore that can't be true. And I think what we forget is that the more ancient people, I think they thought more metaphorically, and I think that